For the headlines. Chinese telecom giant Huawei's chief financial officer faces U.S. fraud charges related to sanctions-breaking business dealings with Iran. This according to a Canadian court. Paris was on high alert Saturday with major security measures in place ahead of fresh yellow vest protests, which authorities fear could turn violent for a second weekend in a row. 6 people died in a stampede at a nightclub near Ancona in central Italy after panic erupted in the early hours of Saturday morning, firefighters said. And Microsoft said it was adopting a set of principles for deployment of facial recognition technology, calling on industry rivals to follow suit and for new laws to avert a dystopian future. I'm Judith Lomero, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. And now to the news. Chinese telecom giant Huawei's chief financial officer faces U.S. fraud charges related to sanctions-breaking business dealings with Iran. A Canadian court heard Friday, a week after she was detained on an American extradition request. Meng Wanzhou was arrested in Canada's Pacific Coast city of Vancouver on December 1 while changing planes during a trip from Hong Kong to Mexico, ratcheting tensions between the United States and China, just as the country's leaders agreed a truce in their trade war. A Canadian government lawyer asked the court to deny her bail, saying she has been accused of conspiracy to defraud multiple financial institutions and if convicted faces more than 30 years in prison. She is specifically accused of lying to U.S. banks about the use of a covered subsidiary to sell to Iran in breach of sanctions. The lawyer said that Meng had personally denied to American bankers any direct connections between the Huawei and the subsidiary Skycom, when in fact Skycom is Huawei. Skycom's alleged sanctions breaches occurred from 2009 to 2014. He suggested that Meng has also shown a pattern of avoiding the United States over the past year since becoming aware of the investigation into the matter, argued that she has no ties to Canada and has access to vast wealth and political connections, and thus poses a flight risk. Meng's detention in Canada came on the day of a summit at which U.S. President Donald Trump and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping agreed to a truce in the escalating trade dispute opposing the two economic powerhouses. In other news, Paris was on high alert Saturday with major security measures in place ahead of fresh yellow vest protests, which authorities fear could turn violent for a second weekend in a row. Shops, museums, metro stations, and the Tour Eiffel were due to close, while top-flight football matches and music shows were cancelled. The French capital experienced its worst riots in decades last weekend, in scenes that shook the country and plunged President Emmanuel Macron's government into its deepest crisis so far. France's Interior Minister Christophe Castaner said he expected only a few thousand people to descend on the capital after the 8,000 protesters counted last weekend, but among them are ultra-violent individuals. He said that these past 3 weeks have seen the birth of a monster that has escaped its creators, adding that a large-scale security operation would be launched Saturday. He vowed zero tolerance towards those aiming to wreak further destruction and mayhem after dozens of vehicles were torched, shops looted, and the Arc de Triomphe War Memorial was wrecked last Saturday.
Je pense qu'il y aura demain, au fond, que quelques milliers de personnes. Mais je sais que dans ces personnes, il y a des gens ultra-violentes qui veulent participer.
U.S. prosecutors asked a New York court Friday to hand down a substantial prison sentence to President Donald Trump's former personal attorney, Michael Cohen, rejecting the lawyer's request for significant leniency based on his cooperation with law enforcement. But one of 2 sentencing memorandums from prosecutors to the court spelled out possible fast trouble for Trump, saying Cohen had provided special counsel Robert Mueller's Russia collusion investigation with useful information on contacts between Trump's 2016 election campaign and Moscow. New York's U.S. Attorney Robert Khuzami said in a court submission that Cohen committed 4 distinct federal crimes over a period of several years. He was motivated to do so by personal greed and repeatedly used his power and influence for deceptive ends. Khuzami cited the officially recommended sentence range of 51 to 63 months for Cohen, who was a top executive and Trump's fixer at the Trump Organization. But he added that to account for the limited cooperation by Cohen, he could support a modest downward adjustment from the range, suggesting a 4-year prison term. Meanwhile, 6 people died in a stampede at a nightclub near Ancona in central Italy after panic erupted in the early hours of Saturday morning, firefighters said. The cause may have been the dispersal of a stinging substance. The young people fled and trampled over each other. Sadly, 6 people died and dozens are injured. Local reports said around 1,000 people were in the Blue Lantern Club in the town of Corinaldo on the Adriatic coast for a performance by Italian rapper Ferrabesta. The accident happened around 1 a.m. A 16-year-old boy who was taken to hospital told the media they were dancing and waiting for the concert to start when they smelled pungent odor. He added they ran to one of the emergency exits, but they found it locked and the bouncers told them to go back. More news when Eagle News International returns.
Health is our most important.
Visiting the Philippines, Manila or Quezon City is a popular destination. But oftentimes the hustle and bustle of the city can be more stressful on your vacation. So when you feel the need to reconnect to nature or relax again, there's a beautiful oasis just outside of the city called The Garden at Ciudad de Victoria. species that you can see here include hydrangea, snapdragon, and stargazers. They're truly beautiful. The gardens at Ciudad de Victoria are so peaceful, tranquil, and beautiful that it's become a haven for young couples and a very popular venue for engagement photos. The next time you want an escape from the big city, the garden at Ciudad de Victoria is a wonderful place to visit.
Welcome back. 12 people, including 6 hostages, were killed in northeast Brazil on Friday after police foiled a gang of armed robbers staging simultaneous pre-dawn assaults on 2 banks in the town of Milagres, officials said. According to the local mayor, Lilson Landim, 5 of the dead hostages were members of the same family and included 2 children. They had been returning from a nearby airport when some of the robbers seized them. The Secretary for Security in the state of Ceará, Andre Costa, said in a statement that an investigation was being carried out to identify those killed and the circumstances of their deaths. Costa did not say whose bullets killed the hostages. Landim had earlier said that based on the initial information, he understood that the criminals killed the hostages and the police killed the criminals. 2 suspects were arrested according to the Costa's office. A heavily armed group arrived in the town in the early hours and went to the center where they tried to commit the crime. There was an exchange of fire between the suspects and police. It said 6 gang members were killed and another 6 people died from gunshots. Various weapons and explosives as well as 3 vehicles used in the bank assaults were recovered. In other news, Russia insisted that Ukrainian sailors it captured after seizing their vessels will go on trial for violating its maritime borders despite international calls for their release. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said the 24 Ukrainian sailors currently in pre-trial detention will be put in the dock for violations of the Russians and international law. When the investigation is over, there will be a trial, he told media after a meeting in Milan of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Russia's top diplomat suggested that after a trial verdict, measures could be taken to improve the sailors' situation, without specifying if they could be pardoned or released as part of an exchange with Kiev. He said as soon as the trial is over, they will have different possibilities in accordance with Russian legislation. Then it will be possible to say how to make their lives easier or agree to some concrete steps, but this will be done after only the trial has been completed. Despite international calls for their release, the courts ordered the sailors to be held in pre-trial detention for 2 months, and they are now in Moscow. 3 of them are undergoing treatment for injuries. The seamen face up to 6 years in prison for illegally crossing Russia's borders. Critics of the Kremlin have warned Russia is preparing a show trial.
Мы, российская делегация, выразили на конкретных примерах нашу обеспокоенность, прямо скажем, нездоровой ситуацией, которая сложилась на пространстве ОБСЕ, и в том числе по поводу роста на этом пространстве военно-политической напряженности. Конечно, много говорилось об Украине, причем это уже стало каким-то, я не знаю, ритуалом для наших западных партнеров. Какая бы тема ни обсуждалась, они обязательно должны были упоминать украинский кризис. Мы не уходим от дискуссии, но призываем всех вместо голословных требований, адресованных почему-то к России, добиться от Киева выполнения его обязательств по Минскому комплексу мер, который был принят в феврале 2015 года.
Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer, a close ally of Angela Merkel, won a tie race to succeed her as party leader, seeing off a longtime rival of the German Chancellor.
Ich nehme die Wahl an und bedanke mich für das Vertrauen. Und ich bedanke mich an dieser Stelle ganz, ganz herzlich, insbesondere bei Jens Spahn, insbesondere bei Friedrich Merz, für diesen fairen Wettbewerb, den wir uns geliefert haben. Nicht enden darf, sondern dieser Aufschwung muss weitergehen und er muss verbunden sein und verbunden bleiben mit dem Ziel, das uns alle eint, nämlich aus der Union mit allen Flügeln, mit allen Mitgliedern, mit allen, die Verantwortung tragen, die gemeinsame, die große Volkspartei der Mitte zu erhalten und zu formen. Und ich würde mich sehr freuen, wenn sowohl Jens Spahn als auch Friedrich Merz gemeinsam an dieser Aufgabe mitarbeiten. Das ist das, was die Mitglieder erwarten. Und wir beide.
The contest, which required a run of vote to secure a 52% majority for AKK, as she is known, is expected to increase the likelihood that Merkel will be able to see out her fourth term until 2021. AKK pledged to maintain continuity after 18 years of Merkel at the helm, while opening up the Christian Democratic Union, or CDU, to more grassroots democracy. In a brief, upbeat address before the vote that brought many delegates to their feet, she called on the party to reject the politics of fear as the far right makes inroads in Germany and Europe. AKK beat corporate lawyer Friedrich Merz, who had quit politics in 2009 after losing a power struggle against Merkel, and long nursed a grudge against the more centrist chancellor. The third candidate, vocal Merkel critic and current health minister Jens Spahn, lost in the first round. Merkel had earlier mounted a staunch defense of her moderate course since becoming Chancellor in 2005.
Es war ein sehr knappes Wahlergebnis, was auch zeigt, dass auf allen Seiten sehr viele Delegierte Begeisterung für ihre jeweiligen Kandidaten gezeigt haben. Aber ich bin sehr zufrieden mit dem Wahlergebnis, also mit dem Ausgang jetzt.
In other news, former FBI Director James Comey testified before U.S. lawmakers for the first time in over a year, with much of discussion centering on Hillary Clinton's email use. The closed-door grilling came amid mounting intrigue over Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 elections and possible contacts between Donald Trump's presidential campaign and Moscow. Comey had pleaded for a public hearing after he was subpoenaed by the outgoing Congress in November, but House Republicans, including some of Trump's allies, insisted on a private session before the Judiciary and Oversight Committees. Comey was questioned as part of a Republican-led House inquiry into possible Russian interference, and Clinton, who lost to Trump in 2016, featured prominently. Republicans exited Friday's sessions complaining that Comey lawyers shut down certain avenues of questioning. Comey disputed that, but gave a rationale for why he not publicly discussed some elements. He said the FBI, for understandable reasons, doesn't want him talking about the details of the investigation that is still ongoing, and began he was FBI director.
The president's attacks on the justice after a full day of questioning. Two things are clear to me. One, we could have done this in open setting. And two, when you read the transcript, you will see that we are talking again about Hillary Clinton's emails, for heaven's sake, so I'm not sure we need to do this at all. But I'm trying to respect the institution and to answer questions in a respectful way. Well, the FBI, for understandable reasons, doesn't want me talking about the details of the investigation that is still ongoing. It began when I was FBI director, and so it makes sense that they don't want me going into those details, but that's a very teeny part of what we talked about today. A whole lot of Hillary Clinton's emails, which will bore you.
Meanwhile, President Rodrigo Duterte wants Congress to extend martial law in Mindanao until the end of 2019, as the previous extension for martial law is about to end this month. Executive Secretary Salvador Medialdea confirmed that President Duterte has already approved the recommendation of the military and the police to extend martial law in Mindanao for another year. The previous extension of martial law in the South will end by December 31, 2018. Senate President Vicente Soto III said that Congress may call a joint session next week, particularly on December 12, to take up the palace request for martial law extension in Mindanao. But this early, House Majority Leader Rolando Andaya Jr. already said that lawmakers in the House of Representatives would be inclined to grant another extension. Eagle News International will be right back. Stay tuned.
Health is our most important asset, and it should always be a constant effort to seek ways to take care of it. That includes professional medical help from the best available. The Manila-Beijing Medical Associated Incorporated
CB ang mag-provide na appropriate ratings sa lahat ng TV shows. Para ugaliin ng pamilya ang responsableng panonood. Teamwork tayo, parents! Rated G, good for all! Oops, rated PG! Dapat may mga magulang para sagutin ang mga tanong ng kabataan. Sabi, rated SPG, maselan!
Higpitan ang paggabay.
Pag rated MTRCB, rated responsable.
OPEC members and 10 other oil-producing nations, including Russia, agreed to cut output by 1.2 million barrels a day in a bid to reverse falls in prices in recent months. Energy ministers reached the deal, which takes effect from January 1 but has already sent prices surging on oil markets after 2 days of talks at OPEC headquarters in Vienna. Emirati oil ministers said OPEC group countries are contributing 800,000 barrels per day as a cut, and the non-OPEC countries will be contributing 400,000 barrels per day. OPEC and its partners, which together account for around half of global output, met against the backdrop of a glut in the market, which had led to oil prices falling by more than 30% in 2 months. Mazrui said the 3 countries had been allowed exemptions from the agreement due to special circumstances. Those countries are Iran and Venezuela because of the sanctions, and Libya because of the fact that unfortunately they are on and off, he added, alluding to the impact on Libyan production of continuing conflict there. Mazrui said that exemptions mean that the cuts introduced by other member states are going to be a bit higher than just the average for everyone. For his part, Russian Energy Minister Alexander Novak, whose country is the world's second biggest producer of oil, said that the agreement should help the market reach a balance and recognize the negotiations had been complex.
В результате той работы, которая проводилась в последние дни здесь, это была действительно напряженная работа, сложная. Были достигнуты важнейшие договоренности между странами ОПЕК и странами, не входящими в ОПЕК. И мы видим, что расширяются санкции, которые вводят отдельные страны относительно также отдельных стран, чего не было 2 года назад.
Over 2018, I've met with consumers in Asia more often than I've heard or read tweets coming out of the White House.
Wall Street closed out a bruising week on an ugly note on Friday as unease over the U.S.-China trade war prompted another sell-off, while an OPEC deal lifted oil prices. Major U.S. indices fell more than 2% to close the market's worst week since March, and one that left both the Dow and the SP 500 in negative territory for the year. European and Asian markets were mixed, with London, Paris and Tokyo gaining and Hong Kong, and the Frankfurt failing modestly. The Dow finished 2.2% lower at 24,388.95. The blue chip index lost 4.5% for the week. The declines on Wall Street followed a mixed U.S. jobs report that had initially helped lift stocks early in the session, in part because it was seen as boosting the likelihood that the U.S. Federal Reserve could soon pause interest rate hikes. But the market quickly went negative, with the losses accelerating following hawkish comments from White House Trade Advisor Peter Navarro in a CNN interview that emphasized that the United States would raise tariffs on China if a deal is not reached. China launched a rover early Saturday destined to land on the far side of the moon, a global first that would boost Beijing's ambitions to become a space superpower, state media said. The Chang'e 4 lunar probe mission, named after the moon goddess in Chinese mythology, launched on a Long March 3B rocket from the southwestern Xichang Launch Center at 2:23 a.m. The blast-off marked the start of a long journey to far side of the moon for the Chang'e 4 mission, expected to land around the new year to carry out experiments and to survey the uncharted terrain. In other news, Microsoft said it was adopting a set of principles for deployment of facial recognition technology, calling on industry rivals to follow suit and for new laws to avert a dystopian future. Microsoft President Brad Smith made the announcement at a Brookings Institution speech and an accompanying blog post, saying it was urgent to begin placing limits on facial recognition to avoid the surveillance state described in George Orwell's 1984. Smith said they must ensure that the year 2024 doesn't look like a page from the novel 1984. Smith said the tech firm will press for legislation to be passed as early as 2019 that would require transparency, human review, and privacy safeguards for any deployment of facial recognition. He said Microsoft would begin adopting these principles itself, while urging other tech firms to do the same. This is a global issue and the industry needs to address these issues head-on. He also said an important element would be to require meaningful human review when facial recognition algorithms are used to make key decisions that can affect a person's privacy, human rights or freedom, and to safeguard against discrimination or bias. Additionally, he said new laws should set limits on police use of facial recognition, so it may be used only with a court order or in the case of an imminent threat. New Era University made it to the top 3 winners of this year's iMake, We Make, Create, Innovate, Collaborate project of the Department of Science and Technology in collaboration with Acer Philippines. More details from our Eagle News reporter, Erlo Bringas. Erlo.
New Era University made it to the top 3 winners of this year iMake, We Make, Create, Innovate, Collaborate project of the Department of Science and Technology, DOST, in collaboration with Acer Philippines. 3 senior high school students from grades 11 and 12 from NEU competed along with representatives from 16 other schools in the competition that challenges young Filipinos to use their creativity. With their submitted prototype for automated irrigation system, Electroculture, powered by Acer Cloud Professor using Arduino Uno, the team of NEU senior high school students bagged the Youth Innovation Prize Award. 2 other schools bagged the same award.
To power up the whole system is nakakonekta ho siya into sa isang solar panel, then directly papunta sa mga solar charger and its battery. Then kaya ho siya naging automated ho kasi lahat po siya ay controlled into, kinokontrol ng isang MCU or microcontroller para ho i-command yung buong system kung kailangan na hong diligan ba yung plant boxes or hindi ay nasa-sense po siya ng mga soil moisture sensors na nakadikit ho dun sa soil. At tuyo yung lupa, that's why yung mga shower heads, saka ho automatically i-irrigate ho siya. Then, after quite some time, kapag na-detect na ho ng mga soil moisture sensors na
kailangan na siya
automatically mag-shut off. Lahat po siya napupunta ho lahat sa cloud na pinrovide ng Acer. So, kung makikita ho nyo ngayon, kumbaga, physically, kita ho natin na kumbaga, wet na ho yung soil. And electronically, binabasa na ho ng sensors na dapat nang itigil yung pagdidilig kasi na-reach na ho yung below threshold po.
This was, however, the first for NEU to participate in such contests. The NEU senior high school students were guided by the NEU Technology Center, Integrated School, and the University Research Center in collaboration with coaches from the NEU College of Engineering and Architecture and the College of Agriculture.
After po ng seminar, 5-day seminar and training and workshop, binigyan po kami ng 3 months para gawin po yung kabuuan po ng prototype. So, nagpapasalamat din po kami sa lahat ng tumulong para mabuo po itong aming proyekto.
To develop more our prototype, instead of using the shower, gawin po namin robotics na automatic pesticide, automatic pag-aabono. So, gawin po namin robotics na lahat para talaga pong mas more on high-tech and develop po yung ating project.
As the NEU Technology Research Center first year, they made this a good start as NEU Bugs Award in the SkyDub competition.
Irrigation system, kasi talagang problema po talaga yon. So I think this could help because with a little bit of water, because it is controlled, talagang malaki maitutulong niya. The growth of the plants is faster and its fruit germination is also hastened because of the electricity that is being injected to the plants. Yun nga po sir, kaso lang ito, cost effective kasi kung economy of scale natin ito na mayroon na tayo nito kasi sustainable po siya eh. At saka in the first place, mag-invest ka lang sa ganito, kumbaga, funds lang ang kailangan.
The prototype for the automated irrigation system, Electroculture, is designed to speed up the growth of plants with proper irrigation and electricity.
Actually, yung ERA University Technology Center po, it was initiated po talaga and very much supported po by the Board of Trustees po of the university talaga po. Sila po yung, kasama po sila sa nag-create po talaga and na it is their instruction para po makapag-form ng ecosystem of innovators po. Actually, the main objective of the New Era University Technology Center is to become an ecosystem of innovators. Kaya yung mga estudyante, magkaroon tayo ng sarili nating incubation center so that maging sustainable po at maging commercially viable po yung mga products ng mga estudyante po natin.
So, kaisa kami sa pangangasiwa sa pag-encourage sa mga estudyante natin na patuloy na mag-isip ng mga projects kung saan makakatulong kami sa lipunan in general. I wish to extend my congratulations to all the participants. Alam ko, we've been through a lot of hardship, medyo nahirapan tayo, pero finally, nagawa natin. Congratulations!
Technology is one of the things that we have to consider nowadays in our everyday lives. That's why New Era University wants to enhance their innovations to help our community. Reporting for Eagle News here in Quezon City, New Era University, Armando Bringas, I am 1V25.
The news continues here on Eagle News International. We'll be right back.
Is our most important asset, and it should always be a constant effort to seek ways to take care of it. That includes professional medical help from the best available. The Manila-Beijing Medical Associated Incorporated is known as one of the most specialized centers in medical services, backed by several experienced physicians in Chinese medicine. At an accuracy rate of 98%, countless patients who visited Manila Beijing Medical Associated Incorporated have already been treated and cured.
Marami ko ospital na napuntahan, pero wala ring nangyayari. Somebody introduced me to Manila Beijing Medical Associated. After 2 treatments, gumanda ang pakiramdam ko.
My friends introduced me Manila Beijing Medical Associated, and luckily, I got cured. So I sincerely want to thank the doctors of Manila Beijing Medical Associated.
For the past 30 years, ang dami ko nang na-take na mga gamot. Nothing happened to me. So until one my friend introduced me to Manila Beijing Medical Associated, you know what? All my illness was cured.
For any health problems or incurable diseases, you can visit Manila Beijing Medical Associated Incorporated, located at 843B Sabino Padilla Street, Binondo, Manila.
Visiting the Philippines, Manila or Quezon City is a popular destination. But oftentimes the hustle and bustle of the city can be more stressful on your vacation. So when you feel the need to reconnect to nature or relax again, there's a beautiful oasis just outside of the city called the Garden at Ciudad de Victoria. That you can see here include hydrangea, snapdragon, and stargazers. They're truly beautiful. The gardens at Ciudad de Victoria are so peaceful, tranquil, and beautiful that it's become a haven for young couples and a very popular venue for engagement photos. The next time you want an escape from the big city, the garden at Ciudad de Victoria is a wonderful place to visit. Hummingbirds, known for their speedy wings and key role in pollination, face threats from climate change, and in order to preserve the delicate species, Mexican biologist Claudia Rodriguez has created hummingbird gardens with a team of students to monitor the tiny pollinators' journey and health. The university's hummingbird gardens feature specialized feeders as well as brightly colored tubular flowers that attract the birds, which are known for hovering in the air as they drink their nectar, flapping their wings up to 200 times per second. The gardens also have nets so scientists can capture the birds, tag and release them, enabling researchers in Mexico, the United States, and Canada to track their migration patterns and monitor the impact of climate change. Rodriguez said she got her inspiration from former U.S. First Lady Michelle Obama, who included a variety of flowers in her famous White House garden to attract bees, another threatened pollinator.
Launched in 2014, the project now has 5 gardens around Mexico City metropolitan area and has inspired private citizens to create dozens of others, all of which help feed hummingbirds on their long migratory route, which stretches from Alaska to South America.
Entonces empezó a crear una iniciativa en Estados Unidos donde quieren promover la conservación de los polinizadores. Y ahí entraron los colibríes. Es el primer país en Latinoamérica que está empezando a tener como un proyecto de jardines de colibríes estructurado. En América, porque los colibríes viven solamente en América, ellos no existen en el viejo mundo, hablamos de que hay alrededor de 330, 335 especies de colibríes. México tiene 57 especies de colibríes. En Norteamérica es el país con la mayor diversidad de colibríes.
The 2 Balangiga bells housed in Wyoming are being readied for transport to the Philippines. The preparations took place after ceremony at the F.E. Warren Air Force Base, led by U.S. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis. It was President Rodrigo Duterte who called out the Americans for taking the bells from Samar, artifacts he said were part of national patrimony. Another Balangiga bell sits in an American military facility in South Korea. During the cold season in the Netherlands, one of the popular snacks is the oliebollen, which is also a traditional Dutch food on New Year's Eve. EBC correspondent Malu Francisco shares the recipe of the old-fashioned Dutch donuts.
Let's have a glimpse of the Netherlands during cold season in the months of October to February. Just like many other places, her beauty remains, and the people's favorite activities go on, like playing music to entertain shoppers walking by, visiting museums.
At the moment, I'm in the Museum Square here in the Netherlands, right here in the capital city of Amsterdam.
Or simply exploring a place of interest. During the cold season in the Netherlands, one of the popular snacks is the oliebollen, also a traditional Dutch food on New Year's Eve. Oliebollen, literally translated in English, is oil balls, and the singular form is oliebol. The oliebollen are said to be the ancestors of the modern-day donuts. The dough is made of eggs, yeast, a pinch of salt, flour, milk, and baking powder. Easy to make at home, easy to follow recipes online, can be conveniently downloaded. Simply deep fry the oliebollen, and when done, top your oliebollen with sprinkling of powdered sugar and cinnamon. Oliebollen are best eaten while warm and with a cup of hot tea or chocolate. Oh, that's terrific on a cold winter day. And there's a great variety of oliebollen to choose from, depending on the kind of filling used. Just drop by a mobile oliebollen stand. There you have it, the apple bollen, banana bollen, jelly bollen, and many more. Remember, some confectioner sugar and cinnamon on top can make your oliebol extra yummy. Well, for something different on New Year's Eve, how about serving some oliebollen for some Dutch flavor and ambience?
I'm Marilu Francisco, EBC correspondent here in Europe, and I am 1 with 25.
And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Judith Gamera, and I'm 1 with 25.